Hey y'all, I know it's been a couple months since my last update video, and I wanted to come up and post another video and let you guys know what's going on. But first, I wanted to stop and thank everybody who commented or liked or viewed the previous video. Your support is greatly appreciated here. At least, I don't have a lot of people watching, so it's good to see that there is at least some level of engagement for something like this and some encouragement as well. So it has been a couple months since I have posted my previous video where I introduced this project that I've been working on for quite a long time, and I have made some progress on the game. However, progress has been a little slower than I expected. I do have a full-time job outside of this hobby that I do, and I have been putting a lot of extra work into my full-time job as I'm actually pursuing hopefully a software engineering position in that career soon. But it's one of those things where I want to put effort into it and split my effort across this because one pays the bills and the other is just a hobby. But I did make some progress. One of the first things that I kind of did, or I actually started doing as part of the last video, but I didn't include in it because it was very much still a work in progress, was I actually took my own character controller that I was using, that I had pretty much used or built myself, and I actually replaced it with the Unity's provided first-person controller. And I did this for a couple different reasons. One of the reasons that I did this was because Unity's first-person controller uses Cinemachine for their actual controller. Cinemachine has a lot of features that would be very beneficial to have, and you can see it in the video. You might notice that during some of the testing, there's a couple things that come kind of built into this, like the noise that's created, so it looks like a person's breathing or organically moving around. Of course, a change like this is kind of a big deal. It took a lot of effort to go through and change how interactions would occur and how things fit together, especially just because Cinemachine is its own beast. It's a whole new thing. So I had a lot of effort that I was running through kind of getting this updated and working, especially things like having the character be moved, like when they get into a closet or when they go ahead and get out of the car in the intro sequence. Things like that took a fair bit of effort to actually deal with. One of the next things that I actually worked on was dynamic nav meshing. Currently, I was just using the standard nav mesh that has static floors. That means that at any given time, the killer can walk through any door and basically go anywhere in the house. But I wanted to make sure that there was that limitation set where the killer would not be able to just go ahead and walk through a door if he felt that it was necessary. I actually used a experimental package that Unity has for dynamic nav meshing, where you can actually change the nav mesh basically based off of movement, and you can update it whenever you need to. And I basically assigned that to pieces from under the door, so that once a door is unlocked, the dynamic nav mesh would register as, hey, this is now accessible. Now, of course, the dynamic nav mesh itself wasn't enough to completely solve the issue of, hey, my killer is walking into doors or walking through doors. Now, what would happen is the killer would actually register a task and want to go do a task in a door or behind a door that's locked. And that is kind of a big issue because that would cause this behavior where the killer would just run either into a corner or straight at that door and then eventually chop the door instead of chopping up bodies. I know that is maybe a better thing, but not in the world where you're being chased around by a killer. A person chopping a door instead of a thing is kind of not scary. So what I actually had to do was I had to create a way to make it so that whenever a person unlocked a door, it would go ahead and figure out which rooms were now accessible due to that door being unlocked. And initially this sounds pretty easy. The complexity comes into play whenever you realize that if there's two different routes to the same location and you're using at least Unity's built-in nav mesh agent, you need to determine which one or which route it can take to get to there if there's only one route available. And so the way that this works now is you can kind of think of it like a depth first search, where basically what it's going to do is as soon as somebody unlocks a door, it's going to kick off where every single door is going to check if it's accessible. The way I did this was just by putting a boolean into the first room. As you have heard of me talk about the room manager before, this is also part of the room manager now. It's one of the functions of the room manager, where the room has a boolean that says, yes, I'm accessible. And the idea is that what it would do is every room would reach out to all of its connected doors, and if the door was unlocked, then the door would reach out to all of its other connected rooms, and it would check to see, okay, is one room currently not walkable while I'm unlocked and another room is walkable or accessible? And if that is the case, it would now create a new room, or it would take the new room and say you are now accessible, allowing the actual tasks or the task manager to start assigning tasks in that room that's now accessible. The reason I took this approach as a depth first search for now is because the map is small and it is hopefully going to remain small, and so performance of something like this should not be an issue. It's important to note that this is not an approach I would have taken if I was doing this in, let's say, like a hotel or something where there's a ton and a ton and a ton and a ton of rooms, just because I could see that becoming a problem very quickly if you had 100 rooms and all of them wanted to check. But luckily for us, we're working with probably around 10 or less rooms. And then the next thing that I worked on is I actually started building the map a little bit more. This is something that actually I kind of did before a lot of the other stuff. I created, basement, put doors in. I just worked some time to flush out some more rooms. Currently in the testing area that we were looking at prior, I had maybe 3 or 4 rooms, like 1 hallway and 2 or 3 rooms. Now I added way more rooms, way more to interact with. I say way more. I mean, if you're working with 3 rooms and you double it, that's way more in my opinion. But hey, I'm hoping to still keep this kind of small. Just for me, I wish I had the time to dedicate to make this into a much bigger, much more dedicated scene. But I'm kind of a sucker for details, and so I always want to spend more time on the details of each room, which means I need to have less rooms. I want to keep the map mostly a secret for those of you who do pick up the game and want to play later. You won't know where everything is. One of the next things that I worked on was this idea of throwing bottles. So now that I had a way to interact with a person, and I had a lot of the mapping of the killer's movements and its tasks, it kind of became clear to me 2 issues. The first is, with there being so little rooms, there's so little things that you can do to interact with the killer right now as it stands. He kind of just does his tasks, and if you bump into him, oh well, you get killed. And I wanted there to be just a little bit more that the player could do or interact with to make the game obviously more a game rather than it just being like a walking simulator where you avoid this weird creature. So I created this way, or I created a thing that the person could do where they would pick up a bottle, the same bottle that you could kick around and make noise, and now you could throw the bottle. The idea behind this is that it would make it so that the killer would be distracted and go towards the bottle to check it out and to maybe get him off your back. However, the downside to picking up a bottle and throwing it is that at that point, once the bottle is thrown, the killer is aware that, hey, there's a person, in this room, in my house. It would increase the suspicion meter that I talked about recently. And with the suspicion meter increased, it also kind of increases the difficulty of the game, is kind of how that scaling is supposed to go. So sure, you can use the bottle to get out of a sticky situation. However, the consequence of doing so is that the killer will pursue you more heavily, because now he knows you exist. One of the next things that I did to kind of address the fact that, well, this kind of just seems like a walking simulator, is I took a look at the current function of keys. When you pick up a key, you unlock a room. That makes sense. However, when you pick up a key, you can then go ahead and pick up another key and another key and another key, and it almost encourages the player to go ahead and just, spend the time as soon as you unlock a room, scan it, grab all the keys, so that whenever you go to the next one or you approach another door, you can hopefully unlock it. Which isn't exactly the behavior that I wanted, because that does make the game, again, kind of a walking simulator. Basically, you would find which room the killer just left, go in there, get the keys out of that room, and then rinse and repeat until you've kind of cleaned the room out. And I wanted it to be a little bit more difficult than that. I didn't want the person to be able to just casually avoid the killer and not have to worry about anything really going wrong. So I actually updated it so that the player can only hold a singular key at a time. Now, one thing I wanted to address from that is, if a player can only hold one key, then it might be a little too difficult, because you don't know which door can be unlocked by that key. And that could be kind of problematic, especially whenever there's, 2 or 3 doors that are locked currently, and you have to go check all 2 or 3 doors. So to kind of alleviate some of the pain of, hey, you have 2 or 3 doors you have to go check that are across the room or across the entire map from one another, I made it so, or I'm planning on making it, I haven't actually changed it quite yet, is that the keys and the locks will be color-coded, but there will be overlap in the colors. So there will be 2 red keys and 2 red locks. Now, that doesn't mean that you can use any red key for any red lock. It means that that red key unlocks one of those locks, and you have to figure out only between the 2 of them. So that's kind of my way of balancing it for now. Obviously, I won't know more until I get more into playing the game and having other people play the game, hopefully, and doing some changes. So going forward, like I said before, I know that progress has been slower than I kind of anticipated or that I would like. And I'm fully aware that, it's been a long time, and some of these changes didn't really take very long, and I've taken kind of a hiatus for work. So from here, I'm basically saying that, hey, I'm still chugging along, still working on this project, I still want to see it all the way through to completion. I'm still trying to flesh out a finishing end for it, as well as a name for the project. I still have no clue what I'm going to call it, but we'll see what's there. Again, thank you guys for any support, any comments, any likes, anything you put down to help me kind of see this, project through to completion. I know that I will hopefully get this finished one day. Thank you.